anniversary of the big trip, I went through my notes with the plans of completing this trip report all too late, but I still wanted to make it happen, if only for posterity. Of course, that was a while ago. Here we are, Thanksgiving morning at the Great Wolf Lodge. But while the wife and kids are at the tree for story time, and before we go to Grandma's house for Thanksgiving dinner, we've got a few minutes to talk about Day 8. I've heard back from some of you faithful watchers, getting some feedback about how long-winded and boring I am, so I'll try to accommodate that too, since I only have a little bit of time. So Day 8 was a day to play around Rocky Mountain National Park. There was less than 200 miles on the plan for today, so plenty of time for sightseeing. I woke up with the sun, headed out on the route suggested by my host. It was a pretty nice day. Thanks for watching. I can't leave it like that. So long-winded, here we come. Since I'd come into town in the dark, I hadn't really had a good view of the area, which was a shame because it was awesome. Route suggested by my host included some neat roads along the reservoir and across the dam, and eventually led me to construction. I hadn't researched a breakfast place. I figured I'd just stumble across something along the way, but before I knew it, I was entering the park. Inside the park, the scenery was overwhelming. I wasn't even noticing that my breakfast and what turned out to be my lunch was just a granola bar. But up at the Continental Divide, I was a bit upset I couldn't get a photo with the bike and the sign, but I made sure to get my mug documented alongside the sign. After leaving the Divide, I was back on the road. Some more awesome views, plenty of snow in areas, making for a unique riding experience. Things were cold in the morning when I left, and the sun still hadn't really come out. Now at 11,000 feet, it was really cold, and I already had all my regular gear on. There were a lot of signs along the way warning about the possibility of weather shifting quickly, so it was an easy decision to put on the rain suit for a little extra heat and a little extra insurance. Coming back into town, it was annoying following cars, riding their brakes, and creating a stench of burning awfulness. It was almost ruining the view, but not quite. I had needed gas before I entered the park, and at that time the GPS said it was only 20 miles away. And I guess I hadn't learned my lesson about how to use the GPS, especially around these mountains, because 20 miles I'm sure was accurate. It was almost twice that if you followed the road like you have to. I made it, being a little overly concerned perhaps. I was able to coast down most of the mountain, but gassing up, I took a while to study the map I got at the entrance and decided to go back into the park and check out the one-way Old Fall River Road. Great little ride with some great views, rushing creeks along the side in spots. About halfway up, those signs cautioning about rapid weather change came to mind, and it started to sprinkle. Then it was downright wet, and it was starting to look scary slick. Then there was hail. I was done by this point, but I was stuck on a one-way road with a bunch of cars in my way. I was able to get around a lot of the cars by kind of riding with my lights in their mirror, and they'd pull over and let me go on. Even with the heated grips on though, I was so cold by the time I got to the top. Then coming back down the mountain was interesting. The hail had passed and the lower elevation was quite a bit warmer, and I got into town wondering what to do to warm up. I didn't have far to go to lodging tonight, but I wasn't interested in going back up the mountain dealing with the hail and the cold, so I looked forward to tomorrow. I had planned on setting up the Iron Butt ride, but had forgotten to grab the documentation I printed out while in San Diego, so I went to the library to see if I could get a new set of iron butt documents. Having run out of chain lube yesterday, I figured I would just wait until I got home, but that muddy road wet I had just gone through had me looking for a bike shop. I plugged in a bike shop on the GPS, got back on the bike, warmed up and rested. I passed several bicycles on the back roads and rolled into the outskirts of Boulder to see the bike shop I had punched on the GPS. Of course, it wasn't a bike shop but a bicycle shop, and I wouldn't have the right chain lube or oil I might need. Eventually I did find a motorcycle shop, got chain lube, checked the oil, which was good, and asked about a spray wash to clean off the dirt I picked up. With that taken care of, I set my sights on lodging for the night. Here I was in Boulder, the northwest corner of Denver, and I had to get to the far east side, Aurora, for the night. On the road, I noticed there was a lot of traffic and realized, oh, it's rush hour in Denver. Having been out west for the past few days and seeing only tourist traffic, I hadn't even thought to consider the hour, and maybe that afternoon at the library was a bad plan, especially because I noticed the temperature gauge was climbing and climbing and climbing while I sat there in traffic. Before the idiot light came on or the engine blew, I pulled over to investigate, and for some reason the fan wasn't coming on. I sort of panicked and hastily decided to head back to that motorcycle shop for some help. The guy I had bought the chain lube from helped me check the oil, heard my problem, and asked, "Did you check the fuse?" Duh. No, I hadn't. Sure enough, the fuse was blown, but I'm kind of thinking, wait a minute, why? Checking the fan, it was all bound up with pebbles and dirt and mud from that Falls Creek drive. I knocked all the debris loose, got the fan spinning again, freehand, and only burnt myself several times on the headers. The guy came out and asked me how I was doing and mentioned that it was time for him to close and he couldn't really help me anyway, so he left. He also mentioned to me that if the fan was busted and I just kept moving, the radiator should be able to do its job. Very true, but it was rush hour in Denver and then it started to rain. Without a better idea, I suited up and headed for the traffic jam. Thankfully, the traffic was so thick and slow, I could turn the engine off and push the bike to keep my spot in line. After what seemed like several hours, I was on the highway and moving along at a good clip, watching the temperature gauge like a hawk. Sure enough, the temperature stayed normal until it was time to get off the highway and into the back streets for the last few miles. There were several times sitting at lights I saw the temperature click up a few bars and had me worried, so I shut it off. The traffic lights out here seemed to be really long, so I got in the habit of just shutting off the engine whenever I came to a stoplight. Following the GPS, I turned into a large mall parking lot and looked around quite a while, confused as to where I was supposed to be going. It took several minutes before I realized I had used some approximate locations for the initial planning, and that's where I was. Approximate, not my actual destination for the night. So I was on the east side of Denver, which was correct, but I had gone 15 miles off the highway the wrong way. Now it was getting late and I had planned on getting to bed early to get started on that iron butt ride tomorrow, crazy early in the morning, but now with a busted radiator fan and a stressful past few hours, I wasn't sure I was up for it. I finally got to the right spot, got settled in briefly before going out to dinner. There was a really cool place within the neighborhood. It was called the Beer Garden. Would have liked to have spent more time there, but I did have to get sleeping and try this iron butt thing tomorrow. Back to the Airbnb place, I talked with the hosts about possibly being witnesses for me on this iron butt form. They were non-committal. It was hard to blame them because I didn't have very solid plans at this point with all the new things that had come to light, but the best they offered was we were usually up until about 1 a.m. Well, I kind of decided that I would get up at 2 a.m. to start this journey, so at about 9 o'clock I set my alarm for 2 a.m. and laid down.